Welcome to the Mind Spark, bringing you the latest news from around the world. The world holds its breath, watching as tensions rise between two of the world's closest allies. What began as a simmering trade dispute between the United States and Canada has now exploded into a full-blown economic war, sending shockwaves through global markets and everyday lives. Canada, once America's quiet neighbor and steadfast partner, has retaliated with a sweeping $22 billion tariff package, targeting a wide range of American goods from agricultural products to manufactured items. This is more than a fight over money or trade deficits. It's a test of a relationship that has defined North American prosperity and stability for over a century, shaping the lives of millions on both sides of the border. The consequences ripple outward, from Iowa's cornfields where farmers worry about lost markets, to Ontario's auto factories where workers fear layoffs and production slowdowns. The date, July 29, 2025. The unthinkable is now reality, as headlines around the world announce the escalation. The U.S. and Canada are locked in a bitter standoff, threatening to unravel decades of trust, cooperation, and shared progress. These tariffs aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They represent a deepening divide across the world's longest undefended border, impacting families, businesses, and communities. President Trump calls the Canadian move a betrayal, vowing swift and decisive action to protect American interests and jobs. Prime Minister Trudeau stands firm, defending Canada's sovereignty and the livelihoods of Canadian workers, insisting that Canada will not back down. The war of words escalates as quickly as the economic battle, with every statement and policy adding new layers of risk and uncertainty to an already volatile situation. Millions of jobs and livelihoods hang in the balance, as businesses brace for impact and families wonder what the future holds. This is a turning point for North America, with decisions made in Washington and Ottawa now shaping the continent's economic and political future for generations to come. Will diplomacy mend the fractures and restore trust? Or are we witnessing the start of a new, colder era between old friends and allies? Let's break down how we got here, and what it means for you, your community, and the future of North America. To truly grasp today's crisis, we need to look back, not just a few years, but across a century of evolving economic partnership and shared history. For over 100 years, the United States and Canada have built a relationship rooted in mutual benefit and trust, with trade as its backbone. The U.S. and Canada have long been each other's top trading partners, a status formalized by the signing of NAFTA in 1994, and later reinforced by the USMCA. These landmark agreements eliminated most tariffs, creating a massive free trade zone and deeply integrated supply chains that span the continent. Today, a single product might cross the border several times before completion, with parts and materials flowing back and forth, intertwining both economies in ways that are almost invisible to consumers. This interdependence fostered shared prosperity, making economic cooperation the bedrock of the relationship and supporting millions of jobs on both sides. But the path hasn't always been smooth. Disputes over lumber, dairy, and other key industries have simmered for decades, sometimes flaring into heated debates. These disagreements were usually managed through careful negotiation and compromise, not outright confrontation. Past leaders on both sides prioritized the benefits of free trade, working to contain disputes before they could escalate and threaten the broader relationship. Today, however, the scale and rhetoric of these disputes are different, more intense, more public, and more divisive. The guardrails that once kept disagreements in check are now showing signs of strain, and old mechanisms for resolution are being tested. Old arguments have resurfaced, becoming the front lines of a new and more complex economic conflict. The very foundation of cooperation that once seemed unshakable is now being tested as never before in modern history. This long and complicated history sets the stage for the current crisis, reminding us that today's challenges are deeply rooted in the past. The crisis didn't appear overnight. It boiled over after months of tension. The Trump administration imposed tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, citing national security. Canada saw this as an aggressive attack from a key ally. Trudeau's government first sought diplomacy, arguing for exemption and reminding the U.S. of their alliance. Washington refused to back down. Pressure mounted in Canada, and on July 15, 2025, Trudeau announced $22 billion in retaliatory tariffs. The list targeted iconic American goods, bourbon, oranges, cheese, hitting politically sensitive states. The message: Canada wouldn't absorb U.S. tariffs without a fight. businesses on both sides scrambled to assess the impact. The tariffs, set to take effect August 1st, escalated the dispute into a full-blown trade war. The era of quiet negotiation was over. The White House responded to Canada's tariffs with fury, making it clear that this was not just a routine diplomatic disagreement, but a full-blown crisis. President Trump immediately took to social media, unleashing a barrage of posts. He called the move a betrayal by a supposed ally and personally attacked Prime Minister Trudeau, labeling him weak and dishonest in front of millions of followers. At a heated press conference, Trump doubled down, accusing Canada of decades of unfair trade practices and vowing overwhelming retaliation that would shake the economic relationship between the two countries. He promised new measures 10 times more painful for Canada, insisting that the U.S. would not be taken advantage of any longer. Trade officials were immediately ordered to draw up a fresh list of Canadian goods to target, signaling that the administration was ready to escalate the conflict. The rhetoric was total economic warfare. Trump framed it as a fight for national pride, sovereignty, and the protection of American workers and industries. "We have all the cards," he told supporters at a packed rally, insisting the U.S. would win and that Americans should stand strong in the face of foreign pressure. The official U.S. response echoed Trump's tough talk, calling the Canadian tariffs unwarranted and unacceptable, and warning of further consequences if Canada did not back down. The administration accused Canada of violating the spirit and letter of the USMCA, as well as broader international trade rules, raising the stakes even higher. The message was unmistakable. The U.S. would not back down, no matter the cost or the pressure from abroad. This set the stage for a dangerous and unpredictable cycle of retaliation, with both sides preparing for a prolonged standoff. Each move by one side would be met with an even stronger response from the other, escalating tensions with every new announcement. The prospect of compromise faded quickly as both sides dug in, leaving the future of U.S. Canada trade relations hanging in the balance. The trade war's impact is real and immediate for families and businesses. In the U.S., Kentucky bourbon producers face canceled Canadian orders, threatening farmers' livelihoods. In Canada, auto parts manufacturers risk losing contracts as U.S. tariffs make their products uncompetitive. Jobs are on the line on both sides of the border. Consumers feel the pinch. Canadians pay more for Florida orange juice and California wine, while Americans see rising costs for lumber and steel. Dreams like building a first home or keeping a family business afloat are suddenly at risk. Border communities, once closely connected, now feel divided and resentful. Political debates grow more polarized, with pro-tariff and free trade advocates clashing. The trade war is redrawing the economic and emotional map of North America. It's not just about supply chains, it's about trust and identity. The fallout is reshaping daily life. Industry leaders are warning that the trade war is unsustainable. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce calls the tariffs a tax on American families and a threat to prosperity. Auto executives highlight how a single car's parts cross the border multiple times. Tariffs disrupt this finely tuned system. Higher costs mean higher prices and fewer jobs. In Canada, business groups stress that millions of jobs depend on U.S. trade. "There are no winners in a trade war," says Goldie Hyder of the Business Council of Canada. Agricultural groups on both sides report lost contracts and rising costs. Small family farms and manufacturers are especially vulnerable. Business leaders urge both governments to find an off-ramp before permanent damage is done. The message is clear. The current strategy is hurting the very people it claims to protect. The pressure for a negotiated solution is mounting. The longer the conflict drags on, the greater the risk to both economies. Economists warn that a prolonged trade war will hurt both countries. Tariffs are a tax on domestic consumers and businesses, not foreign governments. While some argue short-term pain could force concessions, most experts disagree. The U.S. and Canadian economies are deeply integrated. Attacking one hurts both. Dr. Mark Carney likens it to a body attacking its own limb. The damage is self-inflicted. The risk of recession grows as supply chains are disrupted. If tariffs persist, companies may move factories and investments elsewhere, a process that's hard to reverse. Even if tariffs are lifted later, lost jobs and economic activity may not return. The North American trading bloc could lose its edge against Europe and Asia. The real danger is a permanent breakdown in trust and cooperation. Economists urge leaders to recognize the long-term costs. The stakes are not just economic, they're strategic. The future of North American prosperity hangs in the balance. Both nations now face a critical choice. The best-case scenario: rapid de-escalation, with leaders pressured by economic pain and business outcry to return to diplomacy. A summit could see both sides lift tariffs and resolve disputes through USMCA mechanisms. More likely is a prolonged stalemate: tariffs remain, businesses adapt, and the relationship enters a deep freeze. The most dangerous path: continued escalation with new tariffs and broader conflict spilling into security and border cooperation. This could trigger recession and lasting damage. The outcome depends on political calculations in Washington and Ottawa. Will leaders prioritize long-term prosperity or double down on nationalist rhetoric? Public pressure from affected industries and citizens will be crucial. The choice is stark: compromise or catastrophe. The future of the North American partnership is at stake. The world is watching the U.S. Canada trade war with alarm. For decades, their partnership was a model of stability and shared prosperity. Now, its unraveling sends a message: no alliance is truly safe. Global competitors like China see opportunity in a divided North America. The conflict weakens the Western alliance and the rules-based trading system. If the U.S. disregards its own agreements, others may follow, risking a global wave of protectionism. A worldwide trade war could plunge the global economy into recession. This is a test case for the future of globalization. Will the world choose cooperation or retreat into nationalism? The U.S.-Canada feud is at the front lines of this struggle. The outcome will shape more than just North America. Even the strongest relationships require care. Peace and prosperity are fragile. The world hopes these old friends can step back from the brink.